Well, we are going to be talking about that now with Andrea Mrozek. She's with the Institute of Marriage and Family Canada, part of this study. She's in Ottawa to tell us more. Welcome, Andrea.
Thanks for having me.
So, okay, this new report shows that 65% of Canadians believe children should be raised in a home with both a mother and father present. 78% don't think marriage is outdated. 95% believe family life deserves more attention. It sounds like we're very family-friendly already, but at the same time, we're not having kids. So how do you square this circle? What do you need to do to get more babies on the boil?
Right. Well, first and foremost, the report is really looking at the long term, and so this isn't about running out and trying to get pregnant tomorrow, and it certainly isn't about the individual choices of women who want to work versus have a large family. It's about the bigger picture, and looking at our fertility rate in Canada, we see that we have a fertility rate that is well below replacement. Much of the developed world is in exactly the same situation, and the wealth of nations, the report makes the claim, depends on the strength of our families. Basically, if we don't have people to be in businesses, to work, strong families contribute to this. And so the report makes the case, looking at the stats and research, that these things are connected. It also is called the sustainable...
Just on that key point, I'm just wondering how you respond to the fact that China, which has had a one-child policy now for a generation, has 8 or 9% growth. In other words,
yes,
a country that has an explicitly unfamily policy is succeeding economically like no one else.
Yeah, and I was just going to say, we had, the report is called the Sustainable Demographic Dividend because the first demographic dividend happened when we had smaller families. Fewer children meant that more people could be engaged in the workforce and more actively engaged, and that's what China's experiencing right now. Now we're looking at the next level and looking at society down the road. When you compare China and India, as the report does, you see that China is having the same problems that we are having in Canada. Within the next decade in Canada, there will be more people over the age of 65 as compared with people under the age of 15. China is experiencing this same problem of having a very small amount of children or young people to support parents and grandparents. India, on the other hand, has a higher population growth, and these graphs are in the first opening chapter of this report.
Now, I know, Andrea, China's one-child policy obviously was imposed by the government, but there's a self-imposed policy of smaller families. As societies get wealthier, we tend to see around the world that their families are smaller. They have fewer children. So, in a sense, you know, I'm all in favor also of having kids to support the next generation, but is it possible that we could have smaller families and still support our elderly who essentially would be saving money because they weren't spending it on more kids?
Well, I guess that's a point to consider. The report goes into detail on the idea of there not being enough children to support the elderly. Certainly, our economy has to go through a shift of some kind to adjust to the new demographic reality. So that may be true in the future, but in the short term, we would still see a shift where you're looking for people to staff your businesses. Also, one part of the report goes into the idea that families with children buy more than single people, just for the sheer fact that they have more need for groceries, more need for the sorts of stuff that supports your family. So that's another input into the economy.
I'd like to get to you on that issue of the families and how their patterns are different, because that is interesting. It's not just what they spend, too, but the social stability that families offer, the way they vote is different. How do you see that in terms of larger families, how that might shape not only our economy but our politics?
That is a very interesting point. I'm not sure that the report gets into that. There's certainly, I think there has been research done on that, but I'm not 100% the best person to talk to, particularly on the political side of it.
We always talk politics on this show, sorry.
We definitely see that there is a political divide. For example, when you talk about a national daycare program, this is not in the report, by the way, versus money for parents, there's definitely a political divide there. If you have more children and you're getting money per child, you're obviously going to be more in favor of the money allowance that goes into parents' hands. Incidentally, the report is full of suggestions, things that make it easier for people to have families, and one of those things is allowing people to keep more of their own money, their own tax dollars would be lower.
Just a minute left. I want you to weigh in on why this type of policy, increasing family creation, family formation, birth of more kids, is more efficient than let's say immigration, than just bringing in more immigrants. That would seem like a cheaper way to increase population growth, or am I wrong?
Well, we already have a high level of immigration in Canada, and certainly there are different problems and shifts that come along with a huge influx of immigrants. The report, though, does look at the globe. It's an international report commenting on 29 countries across the globe. And for the better part of the world, we are looking at smaller families and looking at this shift into a new demographic reality. And so if everybody's having smaller families, it's possible there will be fewer immigrants to come over here. And the idea remains the same, that we need to be accommodating this demographic shift and learning to care for our elders as we have fewer and fewer people on the other end.
Okay. Andrea, thanks for coming on the show. If people want to find your report on the internet, where do they go?
They can go to the Institute of Marriage and Family Canada website.
Thanks very much.
At www.imf.org.
Thanks very much, Andrea.